Hi, this is Lauren Cheek from Laurencopia, and today I'm going to weigh in on Megxit. So, what do I think about it? Well, first of all, Harry and his family are cousins of mine. We're kind of distant cousins, but we're actually quite closely related. We'd probably show up with a lot of the same DNA on a DNA test. And I'll turn this around real quick for you and show you how we're related. And then I'll weigh in on what I think Megxit is really all about and how I think it could go down. So, I'm turning you around. This is my ancestor, Sir Thomas Cheek. This is actually his picture right here. The guy with the ruff that's a little bit older. And of course, that's late in his age. This is the Cheek family coat of arms. This is are his daughters, both who are ancestors of much of the nobility of England. And actually, these are some of his granddaughters through other daughters. So I'm going to, and this is John Cheek, who was his first ancestor, who is my 13th great grandfather. Thomas is my 11th. The sisters here are the sisters of my ancestor, who was the first Cheek of my lineage. In the United States, his name was Anthony, and he was married, as far as I can tell, to a woman named Deborah Denise Elzoff. And he starts my line in the United States. He came to Virginia. And actually, Anthony, their brother, shows up in the Plantagenet roll of the Blood Royal as a descendant of Thomas Cheek and John Cheek. And then these girls and their sisters, many of those descendants are ancestors of the Queen or some of her family members or of other nobles in Europe. So this makes me and Harry and William and Prince Charles and all of the brothers and sisters and those cousins, fairly close cousins. We're a few generations back, but we have the same blood. I'm also related to them through various different other ancestors. So when I look at Harry and Meghan and I see what they're trying to accomplish, I think of it more on a personal level than being dazzled by aristocracy or monarchy. So let me go to Tom Cheek real quick. Thomas. And down here, if you would like, you can read it on Wikipedia. You can also find it through various other venues, and articles, but this gives you a quick rundown of the children and who they married. And if you look at the last names, you'll see that they married quite prominently, and that these names were the names of people who were barons, baronets, dukes, duchesses. The two girls here were both duchesses. And in fact, if you've seen the movie The Duchess about Georgiana Cavendish is a direct descendant of this lady over here. Oh, shit. Anyway, close up, unintentional close up. And they look just like everybody in my family. So, what is happening with Megxit? Well, this is how it goes down. Harry is in line to the throne after William's children. So he is really the backup plan should anything horrible happen. And that's a contingency that they have in our government. You have a line of succession that goes all the way down, even in cases of like nuclear war or something of that sort, where it goes all the way through our House of Representatives from the president, through our Congress, down to state officials, and it all would depend on which state official survives. Say if the caldera out in Yellowstone erupted and covered most of the United States in ash and killed a lot of people, you actually have a contingency plan that goes all the way down the line to figure out who is going to be next in line or what position is going to be next in line to rule the should something extraordinarily haphazard happen. This is the same in the royal family. So Harry is actually an important figure in the royal family, mainly because if something happened, God forbid a plague or an accident, and William, his older brother's line were wiped out, Harry's line would now become the line of the kingship. And those are just there as a clause for unforeseen things. But from Harry's perspective, and it's very natural to feel this way because, if you've been watching The Crown, and it's highly dramatized, but you see how Princess Margaret was the backup until Queen Elizabeth had children, and then she was still on hold as a backup. The royal family kind of keeps some of the royal family members in a holding pattern, almost, if I would say that. It's not a bad analogy or an explanation. But for instance, Princess Michael of Kent and Michael of Kent, her husband, are Queen Elizabeth II's first cousins. And Princess Michael of Kent was actually an interior designer and had a burgeoning career, making a lot of money, when she married her husband, and she had to step down out of that career because it was considered inappropriate for a royal to work in that way. And now she writes books, and she's actually quite fascinating and very beautiful. Even at her age, she's quite a bit older now, but she's very glamorous and very beautiful. But she does work. She writes books. She can have an income, but she's limited in what income they have. And in fact, it was a scandal in Britain when people found out that the Queen was actually paying their expenses out of her pocket at Kensington Palace for their apartment. But ironically and truthfully, they're not allowed to make an income in certain ways, and they are both entrepreneurial and their children work. But they do certain public appearances and stuff for the Queen. So this is the same thing with Harry and Meghan. Harry and Meghan's biggest issue, I think, is the confining press coverage of them and the kind of snipish way and gossipy way that they're covered in the press. And I can understand that. It's a huge, huge pressure for them. But essentially, if they left as senior royals of the monarchy, they would be allowed to potentially have an income of their own. And they already are both pretty well set for life. If they lived cautiously and reasonably, they could still have a quite fantastic lifestyle without having to really ever work again, although they both seem like they're very hard workers. The caveat of this is that the royal who is next in line as the spare has to be covered with a team of security, which is immensely expensive. It's probably the most expensive thing about any royal wedding or any public venue. So if they stepped away, I think this happened with Princess Diana when she divorced Charles. I think she gave up her privilege to have round-the-clock security, et cetera, which could be very liberating, but also kind of dangerous. And that is where some of the issues and some of the complications come from Harry and Meghan. We've made a whatever, Yeah. Anyway, Harry and Meghan is that, it's not as easy for them to step away, and it's not really that incredibly convenient. And in fact, it could be dangerous for them. And you would have to figure out if the royal family is going to roll the dice and actually let that happen. So there you have it. That's Megxit. What I hope for them is that they will be very diplomatic about it. Maybe they'll actually achieve what they're wanting to achieve and have a life that's a little bit more private and still do public appearances and stuff. But I would see it as a little bit hard to pull off financially. In fact, there was something I read, and I don't know if this is absolutely true on the internet, that Trudeau of Canada said that Canada would pick up the tab for their security if they wanted to live there. But the Canadian people are not really gung-ho about spending that much money in that direction. So I don't know. Is it modernizing of the monarchy? The Queen used to run around and open, cars all over the world and never worried about somebody shooting her. She probably did, but she did it anyway. That's how it was done during the early part of her reign. And now, with all the little terrorist acts and things like that, and just generally crazies running around that might want to take out a royal just for, whatever, mental issue they have, or anger that they have with the government. It does put Harry and Meghan and their child, Archie, in a little bit of a precarious position. So what I hope for them while they're, hashing it out today, and I'm sure it will take more than today, is that they get a compromise that they can live with, and that they can be happy and still be in the wings where they need to be. Anyway, it's my opinion piece, Lauren Cheek, on Megxit from Atlanta, Georgia, on a very rainy, blah day. We'll talk to you later.